Now it's time for our first presentation for the day, titled Designing an Intelligent Defense Against Jordan's Threats of Tomorrow by Mr. Renze Jongman, Cyber Threat Intelligence Advisor, EMEA South at Mandiant. Mr. Jongman brings decades of experience in the government and financial sectors to the Middle East, Europe, and Asia, where he guides organizations through the process of developing a cyber threat intelligence programs. Please join me to welcome Mr. Jongman on stage.
Hello. Hi everyone, I'm Renze. It's a pleasure to be here. It's an honor for me, of course, to be here today in front of such an esteemed audience. But it's also a special day for me because it is my wedding anniversary today. It's 12 years ago that I married my wife. Thank you. Thank you. Very special day. My wife is less happy that I'm here, but I'm obviously delighted. So, a special day. 12 years ago, we married in the Netherlands on an absolutely beautiful day. This is what a beautiful day in the Netherlands looks like. This is what the weather was like. And we had an outdoor wedding. So it was a bit of a gamble for us to, when we woke up the morning of our wedding, this is what it looked like. We were a little bit nervous. So, are we going to be able to have that wedding outside with weather like this, or are we going to have a very ruined wedding because of the rain? Now, why am I talking about the weather on my wedding day, you might ask? It's because what I'm describing is a risk. We took the risk of having a ruined wedding because of the threat of rain. Now, ultimately, at the end of the day, it was a beautiful day. We had an awesome wedding. It wasn't sunny. It was windy and cold, but it didn't rain. So it ended up being all right. But taking a risk or being exposed to risk is not something that only happens when you're organizing a wedding. That happens to businesses as well, and in countries and in regions. So something to take into account. And you can calculate the risk that you run as an organization by multiplying the likelihood of it happening times the impact that it would have if it did happen, and then that's essentially the risk that you run. I'm obviously oversimplifying, and cyber risk is a subset of all the risk that you run as an organization. For example, if you have an annual chance of being hit by ransomware of 4.3%, and if it would happen, it would cost you 23 million, then the annual risk that you're running is about 1 million. And so that's an oversimplified example of a risk statement around ransomware for what might be your organization or your country. Why am I talking about this? You probably know all about this, but the whole point is that security exists to reduce those numbers. If you don't do any cybersecurity at all, then you essentially have a 100% chance of being hit by ransomware, and the potential impact is going to be really, really high. So that money is something that you're going to have to keep in reserve. The money that you have to keep in reserve just in case that ransomware attack does materialize in your environment. So with security, you can reduce the likelihood of that ransomware happening or the potential impact that it would have if that ransomware attack took place. That is the value of cybersecurity, because that money that you now don't have to keep in reserve is something that you can invest in something that makes the organization money, or invest in something that keeps the country safer. So that's the value of cyber security. That's something that you can calculate. So what the value of threat intelligence then, because we're talking about an intelligence defense today, threat intelligence, the value of threat intelligence is essentially the amount by which those security teams are being enabled more at their job, are being more effective and more efficient in reducing cyber risk for the organization, because they get the right information at the right time from the threat intelligence team. Now, to explain that in how that works, I'm going to have to draw a parallel. And I'm going to talk about my sister. My sister, she's the marketing manager for Tesla in the Netherlands. Tesla makes electric cars. They're in the Netherlands, so her job is to market Teslas in the Netherlands. What she doesn't do is go out and spend her marketing budget on, for example, advertisement space in a children's magazine, because children don't buy Teslas. That would be a waste of her marketing budget. It would be very ineffective and inefficient for her to do that. What she does instead is she does market research, or she asks other people to do market research for her. And that helps her understand what the market looks like, what the competition is doing, what the market penetration and saturation already is, what the likes and dislikes are of her target audience, who her target audience is in the first place. And with that information, she can now make informed decisions on how to be as effective and efficient as possible with her marketing budget to reach her KPIs, essentially, her key performance indicators. And again, those things that are on the screen. So market research, market intelligence allows her to be as effective and efficient as she possibly can be with her budget. What market intelligence, market research is for a marketing team, for my sister, that's what threat intelligence, or security research, is for security teams. It allows them to make smart and informed decisions to be as effective and efficient as possible with your security budget. That's all it is, just to make smart decisions and not invest in the dark. That's the whole point of threat intelligence. And we do that typically, one of the well-known, best-known use cases is threat intelligence feed, malicious indicators of compromise and hashes and domain names that have been used in the past in attacks that you can monitor for in your SIM and make sure that it doesn't happen to you. And when it does happen, that you can quickly respond to it with the right playbooks based on the threats that you run as an organization. Okay, so if that's intelligently designing against threats, what are those threats then that Jordan faces tomorrow? Well, there are many threats that Jordan faces tomorrow, but I think what I wanted to zoom in on is threat actors and their use of AI, and specifically generative AI, or Gen AI in short, because, well, that's a new technology that everyone is adopting right now, and the threat actors are no exception. I'll talk a little bit later on how we as defenders can do the same thing, and what that potentially looks like in the future. So there are a couple of things that bad guys can do with the use of Gen AI, and the one that stands out most is social engineering, because it just lends itself so well to the use of Gen AI. That's because the pipeline of creating a phishing attack, pretty much every step of that pipeline could already be automated by the bad guys. You could buy the email addresses and the names and setting up the infrastructure to sending out the emails and then actually collecting the data that you're collecting with your phishing activities. All of that could be automated. But the creative process of writing that email, that's always been the bottleneck. Okay, this email, for example, was sent by a group that we track as ANC3669. And this is not generated by AI. But this is a relatively successful group. People still fall for this. But I think most of us in the audience, we are security professionals, after all. This is too generic for us. This is untargeted. The language is too poor for us to fall for a phishing lure like this. But if you go to any large language model online and you type in invoice reminder, this is what you get, which is a lot more convincing and automatable as well. So if you make that part of your phishing campaign pipeline, essentially, you now have a much more convincing, automatable, and therefore scalable social engineering campaign. And if you buy more data of the targets that you're going to target in your phishing campaign, not just names and email addresses, but maybe also I don't know, Facebook data or payment history or even health history, if that's available online, and it typically is on the dark web for a lot of people, you can really make every single phishing email very, very targeted. So that leads to a situation where we might be faced with a future where we're going to see a lot more targeted mass spear phishing campaigns in the future. So that's an interesting future to look at. Now, you don't need a malicious large language model to do that, because phishing emails, the whole point of them is for them to look legitimate, and legitimate things you can do with legitimate models. But it doesn't mean that there are no malicious models out there. So this one, this is WormGPT, is the best known one. It's available in the dark web right now. And the difference between something like WormGPT and, say, BART is that BART is built on a large data set, so is this. But BART is the hurtful content, and the malicious content is taken out, is filtered out of that data set. And then there's parameters built around it to make sure that there are no malicious or harmful outputs out of a model like that. This model doesn't have that. Okay, this is purposely built to be malicious. This will help you build phishing emails or write malware samples, for example. Now, malware development in general is not something that we're too worried about, because we haven't seen that at the level of sophistication that has us worried. But we see more of it, and people are definitely talking about it in the underground. But I think the benefit that malware developers have with Gen AI mostly is to help them script quicker and to speed up their operations. That's something that we as defenders have as well. I do a lot of coding for my job in my day-to-day work. And I do it all the time as well. Instead of having to go online and hoping that someone has asked a question about something that I'm struggling with in my code, I can just ask GenAI and it will quickly spit out a function that I can then integrate into my wider script. And that is really, really helpful, and it speeds up operations. But the bad guys obviously can do that as well in their malware development. Then information operations, fake news. Fake news is not going to compromise your network. But if we're talking about a national security aspect, then it is definitely of interest. Because this also, fake news, fake content, fake video, fake voice, fake photos, that can all increasingly be automated and therefore scaled and become more and more believable and convincing as well. To write fake news, you had to have people to write fake news. That's increasingly less necessary. And fake voice, for example, that's already very, very possible. If you get phone calls next year, 10 times per week from the central bank, to give your own bank, to provide your credentials for your banking environment, if the 11th phone call that you receive is actually from your bank, you might not be as trustful anymore as you may be today. So we're going to end up in a situation where we're going to be less and less trustful of our online interactions because a lot of fakeness is going to come online as well. And it's going to be increasingly difficult to filter out the authentic news or the authentic content from the fake content. Examples, this one was a fake broadcast, this person doesn't exist, of a fake news item in a fake broadcast. This is a fake Zelensky doing a fake announcement about a fake surrender to Russia on a hacked Ukrainian news website. This is a fake explosion near a fake Pentagon, so it's all fake. Increasingly scalable and believable. Now, that's not all bad news. We have AI at our disposal as well, and this is where it becomes interesting. So how do we use it? Let's take this code as an example. Who can tell me what this code does? Yeah, no one. Of course not, because it's gibberish like this. This is a PowerShell script that one of our incident responders found during an incident that he was responding to, and it was doing things that looked potentially malicious. Like it was querying the registry and it was sending out to a server online somewhere. And it could have been malicious, but he didn't know, and he couldn't tell from the code. Now, instead of having to spend a lot of time finding out if it was malicious or not, he asked our large language model, and this is what it gave back. And it is not 100% accurate, but it is accurate enough right now, especially the first couple of sentences, to help our incident responder understand that this is an update script, so it's not malicious. And he now didn't have to spend a lot of time finding out that it is not malicious. Now, that's for one piece of code in one investigation. But there's lots of pieces of codes in lots of investigations, so this quickly becomes a really, really big time saver for us. And that's reactive. Proactively, we can help us do analysis and hunt for things as well. So we had an analyst in another case that was proactively hunting for a piece of malware called table flip. And this was a very skilled analyst. What he couldn't do was, he wasn't really very proficient in writing Yara rules. This is a Yara rule. You write Yara rules to find a file, typically malware, on a file system or in a repository. And he didn't necessarily know how to do that. He had a lot of skills. This wasn't per se one of them. So he fed the malware to our security large language model. It spit out a Yara rule like this, and it really quickly helped him to augment his skill set with an additional capability that he didn't have himself yet. He was very skillful, but this just happened to be not part of his skill set. But now it was, because of the ability to use GenAI. Now that concept, being able to augment your skill set with AI, I think is the most promising thing about this entire thing. And that's something you can scale to like bigger team level concepts as well. For example, we had an incident in a large multinational environment that we were responding to. Big organization, lots of business units, all with their own security operations centers, and all with their own SIMs, and all with their own querying languages. And we had to go into all of those systems and do querying across all of those systems, but no one knows all of those querying languages. There's too much just for one team to be fluent in those querying languages. So what we were able to do was just query it in one language, and in Chronicle you can even do that in natural language. You can just type, hey, I want to find X, Y, and Z in A, B, and C. And it spits out a querying language translated example. Now you can then translate that to all of the other systems that were present in this environment, and suddenly our ability to operate, the breadth of our ability to operate was expanded quite dramatically and sped up as well. So It expanded our skill set as a team, and I think that's really, really promising. Now, rapid tool creation, I talked about this. The more developers are doing it as well, we can do it too. Quickly script, a quick Python script, for example, to hunt for something specific. So what does that mean for the future? Now, this is the model that I was talking about that we use in Mandiant. It's called SecPOM2, and this is a security-specific large language model. And that's, I think, something that we as an industry are going to be using more and more of in the future. This is a Google example, of course. Other companies will have similar models in the future, I'm sure. But ours is fed with everything from Chronicle, everything from Mandiant, everything from VirusTotal, but also things from open source, like security GitHub repos and the MITRE ATT&CK framework and all of the data in there, all fed into that model. And that then allows us to help us do all the things that we do in a security perspective. That's available to us internally, obviously, but also to our customers and partners in the very near future. So summarizing, these are the 3 pillars that I think Gen AI is going to help us defenders help accelerate our abilities. First, reducing the threats. 0 days or attacks that happen for the first time, we're not going to be able to, the Gen AI is not going to be able to protect you against that because you can't train a model for something that hasn't happened yet. But as soon as it has happened, you can train a model for it, and hopefully that will help us prevent those patient ones. I thought it's a patient ones first, but it's patient ones. So, and then endless toil. If you ask specifically SOC analysts, if you ask security analysts if they like their jobs, they tend to come back with, I like the mission. I like the idea of protecting the organization or the country against evil and badness. But I hate the job because there's just so much toil, too much repetitiveness and annoying false positives and annoying work involved. And that's something, hopefully, that AI is going to be able to help us reduce a lot in the future as well. And then lack of talent, I touched on this a couple of times. The most promising thing, if you have this junior incident response team that is brimming with talent, but it's still growing, it's still growing as a team, but it's got a lot of promise. If you can expand their abilities to operate with augmenting their skill set with AI, I think that really speeds up their ability to operate, to grow as a team, and to help reduce threat to the organization, to the nation, and help us reduce the problem that we're facing as an industry because of the lack of talent that we face in our societies. That's it for me. Thank you very much, and it's been an honor to be here.